Расцветали яблони и груши, поплыли туманы над рекой. Выходила на берег Катюша, на высокий берег, на крутой. Выходила на берег Катюша, на высокий берег, на крутой. Выходила.
Welcome to Boys Club. Tonight we are here with Nico and we are here with Crazy. And Ash is joining us, but not on camera. She caught a cold at the glory hole. So,
do you see that?
No.
You see that?
So she is off camera tonight, but we wanted to do all four of us together and bring to you this episode. So at the end of last episode that we did with Madeline Pendleton, which you can catch on Collective TV tonight, but Collective Live is going to happen tomorrow. We're going to be moving it over. So it's either going to be on either of the channels and you can watch that episode. But we did a clip from the first episode of Gavin Newsom's show that he did with Charlie Kirk. And it's a clip that was kind of going around. So it's probably the clip that you saw. I said we're actually replaying most of it anyways here tonight and talking about it. But we wanted to do kind of a breakdown of that episode. And the purpose of that is we really want to show you how far off the Democrats are and how they just are basically tailing the Republicans. And you will see that in this episode because right off the bat, like you have Gavin asking Charlie Kirk for advice and stuff like that. So here, I'm going to play the first clip.
You know, I want to stress test some of those fault lines as it relates to the reality of our party and where we are today, vis-a-vis your ascendancy, not just individually as an organization. But where was that sort of moment for you? Because it's interesting. I mean, you're such a young guy, so it's not a deep biography here. It's not like 20 years in the wilderness, writing his first book, getting a TV show that was canceled, coming back. It's more just this immediacy of ascendancy. Was it, I mean, were you always sort of born and bred with an ideological mindset, or were you more open-minded and you started to realize a lot of BS was out there?
Yeah, I've always been conservative. Obviously grown in that over the last, 10-ish years. Was more libertarian, I'd say, in the first couple of years, as to be expected. As I got married and have kids, become more conservative. But no, look, just one of the things we saw in the last couple of years that the Democrats completely ignored, and your side was basically not acknowledging was happening, was the crisis that young people were experiencing.
Right.
That, I mean, it's the first time in America's history that a 30-year-old is going to have it worse off than their parents.
Right.
It's a breakdown of the social compact.
Right.
They are the most alcohol addicted, most drug addicted, most suicidal, most depressed, most medicated generation in history.
Right.
And the message that was largely being fed to a lot of young people was lower your expectations. You're not going to have the same American dream that your parents would have.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw this as an opportunity, especially with young men. And again, this got ridiculed a lot by the press that, they're creating this manosphere thing. Look, they're half of the population and necessary for any society and civilization to succeed, which is to have both strong men and strong women.
Yeah.
And we went about that in a very unique and creative way. And again, the president became a cultural phenomenon, where no matter what you threw at this guy, he rose above it. And you'd even have to give him credit. I mean, basically 700 years in federal prison.
Yeah.
States tried to kick him off the ballot. I know you spoke out against it, but California did have a faction that tried to kick him off the ballot, right?
That's right.
And despite all of that, of course, being shot, and that was kind of the crescendo of all of it, he kind of became this figure of an American comeback story.
Yeah.
So he personified what a lot of young people, especially young men, wanted back in their politics, which was an ascendant rebel attitude against these institutions that have failed them so miserably.
It's interesting. So and you keep saying we, which is interesting, and that's the organization that you created.
We would be like conservative movement, MAGA. But yes, I have Turning Point USA, Turning Point Action, Charlie Kirk Show.
Yeah.
But when I'm saying we, I mean more specifically kind of those of us that saw this political moment 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay, so that is from the beginning of the episode, and right away they're getting into what are you seeing and stuff like that. So Nico, do you want to do you have any comments on this one?
I just think it's really interesting right at the beginning. Throughout the whole podcast, you'll hear kind of no pushback from Gavin Newsom at all. And Charlie Kirk is hyper focused on young men, like like men. That's what they're going to say throughout the whole podcast. But I also like in this point, like he sets up the podcast because I noticed like throughout this whole thing that Gavin Newsom kind of lost control. Charlie Kirk took full control of this podcast. Sets up the mythologizing of Trump, which is very important for, pushing conservative rhetoric as a whole in the United States. It's why we have, George Washington never told a lie, things like that. They're saying like, look at this mythological kind of like person that we know in reality is just a man, a very, very, very bad man. But Charlie Kirk is setting that up.
Yeah. No, there was definitely a lot of the push of like, he brings in MAGA, he brings in Trump, he brings it like that whole thing and how well they're doing, like how well, like he's constantly talking about that. Did you want to add anything crazy to what Nico was saying?
Basically, just like kind of like bouncing off what Nico said, just a lot of like mythologizing and trying to turn Trump into like this, mythological figure, which is what groups like QAnon does. The whole like he's gonna come and he's gonna cleanse the government and fix everything, which is the same thing they did with Hitler. Same exact rule book, same exact playbook. Oh, he's gonna come, he's gonna make strong men. But that's what Mussolini banked off of when he used Italian war veterans, like, oh, we need to put our strong men back in power. He brought these strong traditional men back in power and, give them what they, want or whatever. And it gives a lot into like the manosphere that like he mentioned, people like the Fresh and Fit podcast and things like that, because under fascism, like a lot of people are disenfranchised. Like he said, like he even said it, like, oh, like we're the most addicted and medicated and most depressed, whatever. And things about it because like that's what capitalism does. Like it decays into fascism. It doesn't rise into fascism. It doesn't spring into fascism. Like it decays and it gets worse and worse and worse for each coming generation. And for that, when you have white supremacy on top of fascism, you have essentially this group of white men who feel very, very entitled to things, but they're not seeing it. And because they're not seeing it, instead of seeing the system for what it is, seeing capitalism for what it is, seeing white supremacy for what it is, they feed them this lie that, hey, this is not working, not because fascism doesn't work or because capitalism doesn't work. No, we can't have that. It's not working because gay people exist. It's not working because Jewish people exist. It's not working because it's some racist liberal plot against the white man. And so they end up falling into it harder and harder and harder for this hopes to get something that literally capitalism cannot promise them. Like it just doesn't work.
Yeah. I had a big thing about them not addressing capitalism. They're not ever addressing the issues at all. In fact, I don't know. I don't know if we picked it up in the clip, but there was definitely a time where, Kirk is like, oh, well, these are the issues. And then like, this is what the Dems aren't doing. And then Newsom asks him, or it might be the next clip, Newsom asks him, like, what did the Dems do to lose these points or something like that? And he can't even answer because the whole issue is not what he's saying. And a lot of I want to also stress that the points that he's making, I tried to look into a lot of the points he makes, like when he gives like percentages or numbers and stuff, they're not right. I mean, like right off the bat, I could be nitpicky and go, yeah, you know what? Men do not make up half the population. Sorry.
They don't.
Yeah, actually, women make up more of the population.
Ash, do you have anything to add on this one? Or are you? Did we cover it?
Not really. I mean, it's just the general theme throughout the entire interview is Kirk scapegoating like marginalized and oppressed people, and Newsom is either agreeing with him or just like not pushing back at all. And it's just very telling.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into the second clip.
But this has been a point of pride for you that you didn't do a 4-year degree. And
Well,
you've
yeah,
really,
because I represent most of the country. Is
Right.
that actually still the majority of the country does not have a college degree. And if I may, bluntly critique the Democrat Party, you guys have become so college credentialed and educated that you guys snobbishly look on the muscular class of this country, the people that kept things afloat and running during COVID. And yeah, I mean, the majority of the country didn't go to Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Stanford, Caltech, or
Amen.
Cal Berkeley, right?
Thank you.
And the Republican Party has become far more representative of them, large in part thanks to Trump. But yeah, and like I say it with some pride also because as an entrepreneur, I tried to build something, right? Not just seek a credential.
Love that. And there are 11 million folks. There are 11 million jobs out there. You make this point all the time.
Oh yeah, all the jobs that don't require college
That do
degree.
not require a college degree.
So on that one, like there was a couple of things that I was like the muscular class, like what, like Nico was bringing up the whole thing about like, so on this young men thing, and it's like the muscular class, and that there's no point in this entire hour and 15 minutes that Charlie Kirk addresses the working class as the working class.
Mm-hmm.
That he does that.
Not to mention the whole like masculization of the working class, like calling it muscular class, and just completely shutting out women and femmes altogether. And how just
Exactly.
that's just so weird.
Yeah. So, and then like I was, the 11 million jobs, I actually looked that stuff up. So, I'm seeing 7.7 million, which whatever they, whatever they're looking at for those numbers. As of like 2023, there was 171 million workers, people that are working age or could be working in the United States. And so like 11 million jobs out of that, like, I don't even know what point he's trying to make with that. 11
It's very much pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's like he's telling people not like, I don't know if this comes across a little bit more later on, but he tells people not to go, like college is bad, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
And like you having to have a college degree, that is rising for your jobs. Like that's going to be, they say in 2031, there's going to be 72% of all jobs are going to require a degree of some sort, like could be associates, but a degree. And then 42% of those will be at least a bachelor's.
I'm sorry.
No, go
I was
ahead.
going to say, I think like, honestly, it's Charlie Kirk still going back to this like hyper masculine, misogynist view, because we know, like, at least here in America, the most college educated, demographic are Black women.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's like that scares people like Charlie Kirk.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because the landscape's changing.
And then also to kind of jump off that, it's also just the general rise of anti-intellectualism that we see in general that happens even under fashion all the time. They hate the idea of, I think Reagan even said it, something like, "Oh, we fear an educated proletariat."
Mhm.
Like they don't like the idea of people actually getting a proper college education. Because they, this whole like thing, he's like, oh, they're so snobby and they all went to Harvard and they all went to, it's like, okay, that's the politicians, but there are still people who are voters that are still working class who are still voting for these parties. Either way it goes, like the voters themselves are still working class people.
Mhm.
So like, it's not about the politicians, it's about, the voters and the actual working class and the actual people who want to see these policies go through. And if you have this weird sort of thing, like where they're all snobby and they all have college degrees and more people actually have to go to college to get a job, it's like, the problem's not education here. Like the problem is just the disconnect between the workers and the right for them to essentially, govern themselves, essentially, which is like the whole point of communism.
He does a really weird thing too that I noticed along with always like mentioning men, like young men and stuff like that. But he does this weird thing because he talks about like him self-educating and how important it is to know like philosophers and how important it is to know this stuff. But he's anti-intellectual for anyone else. Like he like brings this stuff up that it's
that's the other coin. That's the other side of the coin of anti-intellectualism, pseudo-intellectualism, where either like you don't get educated on the stuff you should, which is where the anti-intellectuals comes in, because that's when they get into stuff like oh, you shouldn't learn about liberal arts, you shouldn't learn about gender studies, and they're all the stupid things. But then they turn around and they go on about Aristotle, Nietzsche, stuff Mussolini said, because he was very inspired by philosophers and stuff, like all these different things. They want you to know the stuff that helps reinforce capitalism.
All right, Nico, did you have anything you wanted to go?
I mean, the only thing I can think of is, I think all of us can agree. We've all complained about Phil Bros, like just in general, in all spheres, and kind of like how philosophy for a lot of men is this like one up for their internalized patriarchy that they hold. And, it's like, but then at the same time, especially with conservative men, they'll turn around and if I go, oh, well, sociology says this, they'll be like, that's a soft science. That doesn't count, but they're going to tell me everything they know about Aristotle. So I'm just like,
whatever.
All right.
I'm good. All right, let's do the next clip.
What do you do? Seriously, Charlie Kirk, give us some advice.
Yeah, better ideas, Governor.
Is
Like,
it
for
ideas?
example, I mean, like, if you want to, like, you have an opportunity to, like, run to the middle and seize this mantle. Obviously, you're talking to me of all people.
Yeah.
So, like, you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports, that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate it.
But, like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. It is an issue of fairness. So it's deeply unfair.
Would you speak out against this young man,
I mean,
A.B. Hernandez, who right now is going to win the state championship in the long jump? I can see you wrestling with it.
No, I'm not wrestling. I'm not wrestling with the fairness issue. I totally agree with you. By the way, as someone with 4 kids, you got to
and two daughters, right?
2 daughters,
and I have a daughter too,
and a wife that went, God forbid, to Stanford and played on the junior national soccer team, and a guy who got into college only because I was left-handed and could throw a baseball a little bit or hit the ball for a little bit. So I revere sports, and so the issue of fairness is completely legit. And I saw that the last couple of years. Boy, did I saw how you guys were able to weaponize that issue at another level.
Not weaponize. That's
well, weaponize may be pejorative. You're right, but you were able to
shine a light on,
highlight it in a way that, frankly, there are not that many. We're talking about, I think, NC2A had what, 510,000? No, but I just didn't realize
it's 890 medals and trophies that we know of in the last 5 years. That's a lot.
No, so let me step back. Say completely fair on the issue of fairness. I completely agree. So that's easy to call out the unfairness of that. There's also a humility and a grace, that these poor people are more likely to commit suicide, have anxiety and depression. And the way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue that I have a hard time with as well.
Why do they have more suicides? Should be the question. But yeah, I mean, that is just showing that's showing Charlie like totally running over Newsom too on the that's not weaponization, where Charlie gets away with saying everything in this. So, but it also, I think it highlighted too, like when Gavin's bringing up like, oh, I went on a baseball scholarship to college. Like he's being one of the guys. He's I'm just like you, Charlie. Like you and I are a lot alike. You didn't finish school, but I just went on this, But why don't you take this one, Nico?
Yeah. So first off, I want to address the full 890 medals. That study was a completely biased study that was about the violence against basically cisgender women and girls by trans people. So, of course, they're going to utilize that. But I just want to make note that comes from a singular study, which, of course, Charlie Kirk's anti-intellectual. Things don't become reality with just one study. It's just not how it works. It takes multiple studies. But in the long run, a lot of people who go into sports are already medically transitioning, even if they're not. I don't care. Like, it's sports. Why? It's again focusing on this like almost like weird patriarchal standard of we have to revere sports. One of the only things I will respect women in is in women's sports. But then it's like a trans woman can't be in it, a non-binary person can't be in that sport. But women obviously can't be good enough to win.
Yeah.
If anything, they like any person that they deem biologically male in their mind will automatically be better and somehow be unfair. And Gavin Newsom just runs with it. Gavin Newsom, if Gavin Newsom was, supposedly someone who stood for LGBTQ rights, which he says multiple times in his podcast, he would have been aware of the study, known how biased it was, and given pushback. But instead, he's not pro LGBTQ. He is very obviously for it. He likes what Charlie Kirk is saying.
Yeah. You want to add anything crazy? You all said on that one.
Yeah, basically, it just continuing off Nico, it just reminds me of how Kamala, in an interview, she was asked like directly about like LGBTQ issues, and she couldn't even as much as like fake an answer. She was just like, they were acting like do you support LGBTQ community? And she was like, well, you see, we're all Americans, and it was just so just dumb to watch. And if I have my facts straight, she also, I think under her watch as like a DA, a trans woman got sent to jail. And if I believe correctly, that woman ended up dying. Like she got and again, it was a gruesome death. Like she got tortured to death in her cell by her cellmate, like tied down to the chair and tortured to death. And so it's just like seeing people like Gavin Newsom providing no pushback, seeing people like Kamala, who is more or less directly involved, not like directly involved, but like indirectly involved in like the death of another trans person yet again. Like these people don't care. They're not here to protect you. It was never they were never invested in it. They were just invested in it enough to get votes.
Yeah. So what I was going to bring up this later on because there's another clip we're going to go through, but I feel like Charlie's trying to press on this, that this was like the biggest issue. This was the biggest issue that they were putting forth for 2024. And it wasn't. They were the only way that they were using the trans people. They were weaponizing trans people. They were weaponizing trans people against people who didn't want to vote for Kamala because of Gaza. So it wasn't that, Charlie, you're going to hear it later on. Charlie's making it like that was their one sole issue that Kamala was running on, or like that's what he's trying to make you think. You know what I mean? And there wasn't anything they were running. Oh, we're going to like codify all these things for trans people. They haven't even like done that for gay marriage. They haven't done that for anything. You know what I mean? Like they weren't coming out like that. They weren't coming in support. They were weaponizing trans people. That's all they were. All right.
Also, not to mention the Olympics as well with Imani, I believe, and like a perfect example of how this stuff wraps back around and hurts not only cisgender women but also women of color. And also another thing is that it also wraps back around and it harms Black women, because I saw clips of I think it was like Black studs getting harassed in the bathroom by male cops because someone thought that they were guys just because they were mass presenting. Yeah. And that was it. And it's like people always want to talk about trans people this, trans people that. It's like this stuff is already happening. Like trans people being killed already happening. Cisgender women being killed and hurt because they're mistaken for trans already happening, has already been happening. It's just like, again, like the only people that will protect us is us.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to the next.
You guys are giving us an 80-20 issue that is just permeating the country. It's such an affront to our senses. And you look at these videos, Governor, because it's not just that it's, okay, you read an article about it, but these young men that are in these sports, they're throwing around girls, and it is an issue of fairness, but it goes to a broader arch narrative, there you go, which is important.
Now, I want to hear this.
Which is this, that the Democrats, you guys will tend to view an incident through an oppressor-oppressed lens.
Yeah.
It's your training. It comes from college. It comes from... And we, as conservatives, tend to view things through right or wrong or just or unjust.
I'm just like, when will they stop complaining?
But yeah. So in this clip, I've brought this up not, and I don't think on collective podcasts, but before, like I was a female in sports. I was a girl in sports. And a lot of times, because I was growing up in the 80s, there was sports I couldn't do because only boys had it, or I had to play with the boys, and that's what I did. You know what I mean? Like, and then I got into mixed martial arts, and I loved throwing around the boys. That was one of my favorite things. So, like, this is the thing that gets to me as a woman. Like, you're telling me I'm too weak to make up my own mind whether I can compete against, somebody else anyhow. So like, it just, like in that sense, like I was like, no, because I want to beat the men. Like I want to do that. So, but like, I don't think that, I don't think I'd have any issue ever, playing a game or, having mixed martial arts with a trans person, because like, I don't know, like, I don't think that they'd be any stronger than me. I'm a pretty strong girl. Like, I'm right. Like, I don't get it. Like, it doesn't even make sense in the fact that like, you're just competing against someone else anyways. Like, I don't know. I hate that part. Like, I know, like, it gets into this weird thing because, like trans are women, trans are girls, you know what I mean? Like, and I do believe that, but it pisses me off that men use this, because as a female that was in sports, that fucking pisses me off. It's a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. So, and he's doing this right now, like this interview and saying these things while like there are two bills in California right now, earlier this month were introduced to ban trans women from sports. Yeah. And then in October of 2024, he struck down a bill that would have made seeking gender affirming care access easier. So like, this is definitely... I think he's doing this on purpose. I think he's absolutely signaling to that base.
Well, I want to say too, it's not even just the signaling to that base from him. If you notice, like the articles that came out, like right after the election, or even heading up to the election, and then like still to this day, it was the trans issue that hurt the Democrats. It was not the trans issue that the freaking Democrats. It wasn't the trans issue. It was Israel. It was the Palestine issue. That was the issue that really hurt them. And they still won't see it. They'll sit there and blame it on trans when they weren't even like doing anything. Like Ash just said, they weren't protecting trans people. They were weaponizing trans people.
Yeah, absolutely.
No. Like I have a family member who literally goes there, and it's like, they're a Democrat. It's totally fine. I have no problem with it in this scenario, because they go to the Capitol all the time to protect their children, who all of them are trans. And they have watched under both Biden and Trump now how rapidly, both within the last like 10 years, their children have lost their rights. It doesn't change anything. And it's one of those situations, like I'm thinking about this, like, the Republicans and conservatives are saying you lost because of the trans issues, but then the liberals are coming at us as communists and saying you are the issue because you didn't support trans people.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm a trans person.
Yeah.
I saw this stuff already happening under Democratic parties. Nothing was going to change. They were just nicer about it. They gave me a rainbow collared street corner, but still passed these bills that made it where my niece, nephew, nieceling can't have gender affirming care.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just so funny listening to these two people because they're on the same board. They're the same. They're coming from the same stuff. You know, Gavin may be okay with like gay marriage, but I don't even know if he's fully okay with that. But I mean, like, basically when it comes down to it, they only care about this stuff to weaponize it either way, either to weaponize it, the Republicans weaponizing it against the Democrats and the Democrats just weaponizing it pretty much against the left, right? Yeah. So, all right, let's do next one.
And the country is going far more in our direction and away from your direction, because the problem with oppressor oppressed is eventually you run out of oppressors and you start creating them out of thin air. Yeah. And you start trying to say, well, these people must be blamed for all of our problems, and that's where you get a lot of the let's just say for example, this Wall Street Journal editorial, like, when will the white men shut up or stop complaining? That does no good for anybody, right?
No. I don't know who wants to take this. Crazy, why don't you go first?
Honestly, I don't even know what that clip was even trying to say. It just got to the point where they just started speaking nonsense. Frankly, the whole taxes for is it doing the taxes for the transgender aliens in the prisons thing?
Yes, that's exactly what it's doing.
I mean, if my laughing is not, obviously, this is just a joke. This is just all just one big joke. No one can take it serious. And then just the weird shoehorn into NFL football because as we all know, only men watch football. And because every time my family turns on football for Thanksgiving, my eyes just go blind when I look at the screen. I can't see anything. But yeah, it's just a joke. I can't see how anyone can take that seriously.
I think it's pointing more and more towards Kirk is coming across like, oh, it's all just entertainment. This is all just entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the team sports stuff. And he just keeps hitting into that. Go ahead.
I also want to note, in this little snippet, Gavin Newsom's the one who starts bringing up the illegal immigrants in taking taxpayer money, not Kirk.
Yeah.
Gavin Newsom is ready to talk about this because obviously, as some rich white dude, as a Democrat, he's telling them he's ready to see what they're going to say so he can hop on and benefit from it.
Mm-hmm. You're right. I was feeling like I felt like that might have been a slip because where the conversation was going, and then he threw in illegal, and he didn't want it was something it was tying into the trans stuff and the immigrant stuff and the prison stuff was kind of all tied together. And then Newsom was trying to go somewhere with it, and it just totally told on himself. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He totally just was overconfident and got into that. And the fact that it's brought up in this thing that Charlie is just a debater. That's all he does. So he uses the tactics of a debater. He's constantly, he'll click on, if Gavin says something, but Gavin's not clicking on when Charlie says something. He's not pushing back on something, but Charlie's right there on it. He's I can benefit. This is to my benefit, and this is another reason why someone like Gavin Newsom should not have someone like Charlie Kirk on their podcast, because they don't know how to, they know regular debate tactics. They know, going on the stage and doing a debate. They don't know the types of the debate bros do. You know what I mean?
And you can tell they're not used to it because throughout this whole podcast, Charlie Kirk will like start talking while Gavin Newsom's talking, and you can hear the uhs trying to collect their thoughts because they completely lost what they were planning on saying because they're not used to just having like a conversation where someone can interrupt you at any moment when you're making a point.
Yeah, and it's also how people the whole like right wing grifter thing even started, like Ben Shapiro, Stephen Chowder, he's the one when like the whole Change My Mind and me. I think Matt Walsh also started off as being a debater, and the whole point of a debate is that it's not about coming together to find the truth and the objective, points that we all believe. Like, no, it's not that, idealized, oh, we all debate our ideas in the marketplace of ideas. Like, no, it's about completely tearing down and tearing up your opponent's argument and to a point where they cannot effectively argue. That's why they constantly love interrupting people. That's why they constantly love, having debate live. You see it leak into even leftist spaces. Everyone wants to have a debate live. Everyone wants to debate me, debate you. You see it all over Twitch. You see it all over TikTok. You see it all over YouTube. Even like it's just constantly debating, and it's like it's not about holding your own in a debate. It's about being able to actually effectively spread communication. And that's what a lot of these conservatives are really good at doing. They're good at making debates, getting sound bites, spreading information because they have been able to successfully take over how being smart sounds.
Yeah.
One of the best descriptors of Ben Shapiro I have ever heard was that he's a stupid person, smart person. That is what someone who doesn't actually know what being smart is. That's what Ben Shapiro is. Like, he sounds like the perfect nerd to so many people. And that's like a really big thing that conservatives try to do. And then on top of the previous point where I made, like, they are all like anti-intellectual. So they're pseudo-intellectual, anti-intellectual, and also posture as intellectuals. And like, that's all one big grift.
Yeah. All right. Let's go into the next clip. Oh, I did want to mention on that one though, that I did actually do some media training when I was doing Boston for Bernie. And there is the whole thing of you're supposed to keep in mind like 3 very important points that you want to make, and you keep bringing it back to that. And you'll notice like Charlie does that. He'll like bring it to certain points. He'll bring it to Trump. He'll bring it to the trans issue. Like, these are the things that he wanted to harp on, and he does a good job of doing that.
It was the trans issue that was just, monopolizing. And this was even more challenging because there's issues of people that are incarcerated and illegal incarcerated individuals getting taxpayer funded. Yes. And gender reassignment. And that is a 90-10, not an 80-20. Right. And then she's like enthusiastically defending it, bragging, being like, I'm all for this, I'm all for this. And then you had the video that it was a validator. Brutal. Yeah. And so tens of millions of them, brutal. And then the targeted focus from the Trump campaign, next level. And then Charlamagne comes out on Breakfast Club, is like, this is insane. And they ran it on NFL football. Brilliant. Yes. And so you're trying to reach men. Yeah. It's a brilliant campaign commercial. It's brutal.
Okay. Spoiler first. Gavin never answers the question what the Democrats are going to do. Gavin asks Charlie what the Democrats should do. So
he also never went to his third point.
No.
He goes to his first, he goes to second, and then Charlie Kirk basically takes over the conversation. Gavin Newsom never says what his third point is.
Nope. No. Though, I mean, that whole thing, there was just so many different things in that was just like, first of all, Latinx, that's been around for 20 years.
Right.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. Like Latinx, Latine, it's just non-binary way of saying like Latino or Latina. It's just like such like a not an issue thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand this like anger towards like pronouns and like degendering language.
I don't know. It's it's like so much, and then like the wokeism, the awakening,
Oh
like
yeah.
it's like and tying it to 2020, like, all right, you guys were complaining about this, 4 years before that too. So I don't even know why you're saying that it just started in 2020, and I don't like, how did it become like this big thing? Like, no, it's been like, we were in COVID. Like, if you're talking about jobs and stuff, that was all a mess. Like I don't know how you were seeing this mass adoption of these policies or these ideas, I guess. I don't know. Anything else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, this reminds me of like they're using this and being like, Gavin Newsom, of course, makes sure to say, like, I never supported defund the police. And I remember specifically, like, that year when Biden got elected, during his inauguration speech, he's like, it's not defund the police, it's fund the police.
Yep.
So they're like completely ignoring that the Democrats were never on the side of defunding the police.
Oh,
the person they wanted to be president was literally for funding the police. And we saw that.
And Gavin only protects himself. He's not saying, like, look, Biden's whole thing was fund the police. Biden, like, there's all these cop cities going on. I mean, he probably wouldn't call them cop cities, but I mean, like, he could have said, like, look at all the money that Biden put towards the police. No, he's like, well, I'm not for that. So he's not even doing the show in protection of the Democrats either. He's protecting himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but it's a pattern, and the trans thing is just one of those things. But the second element was also what we saw under Joe Biden was, if you came to the southern border from any country and you spoke the magic words, you could go to any city you're choosing, right? CBP1 border app, and all of a sudden that steel worker in Pittsburgh's like, why am I paying all these taxes? I get it. And I'm getting I can't afford beer. I can't afford anything. Mm-hmm. And so I guess my question is to you, what are the Democrats going to do about it?
So I'm going to answer that in a second, but let me pull a few more threads. You said 2020 is when you started to see the Democrats sort of advance this notion of wokeism.
It's when the awakening
really started. What was it?
You know what I'm talking about.
No, but the Latinx stuff. That, by the way, not one person ever in my office has ever used the word Latinx.
So can we finally put that to bed?
Yeah, where did that even?
No more Latinx, everybody.
Well, I just didn't even know where it came from. I'm like, what are people talking about? Was it the pronouns? By the way, once you'd think California invented the frame of the pronoun. Now, I mean, literally, I had one meeting where people started going around the table of pronouns. One. There's been a hell of a lot of days between 2020 and today in one meeting. So it's not like I'm like, what the hell why is this the biggest issue?
Well, in corporate America, it's everywhere.
Okay, all right.
And college campuses.
It must college. See, that's where you reside a lot, in the college campus.
So you got to defund these schools if they're doing the pronouns.
Jesus, okay. And so number 3, what else? I mean, did you start it? What was also the big wokeism thing? I mean,
first of all, it wasn't just the projection of certain narratives, which we can obviously go through. Yeah. But it's when policy started to come forward.
And what kind of policy?
Hiring practices. When we're not going to hire.
That was DEI decades ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just called outreach and inclusion.
But we saw mass adoption. What we saw, and not only that, we saw pledging of billions of dollars of donations to racial justice from the biggest types of corporations imaginable.
Fair point. And that was sort of post George Floyd.
That's what I'm saying. That's when it's so you had a combustible.
And was that wrong? I mean, to address the issue of racial, I mean, there's legitimate issues as it relates to past practices.
What was insulting to a lot of people is, number one, where's the money going? Because the top premier BLM charity ended up being a racket.
Yeah,
right. With Patrice Cullors, like, where'd that $100 million go? So all of a sudden we learned that, and all these pledges of corporate dollars were going to this woman that's like hiring her like brother for personal security, right? And that, like, a lot of, and you would even agree, like
that became right, like, the poster child.
But number two, which I think was most important, was that it elevated then this scholarly community that was otherwise fringe, like Robin DiAngelo and other people, and her book White Fragility. Literally, the entire premise of her book is that white people need to stop being so fragile about race. You need to sit down and shut up and hear how racist you are. And she was brought on tours to corporations across the country. Yeah, and by the way, just so you understand, this was a phenomenon over months and months, and it didn't quite catch up in time for the 2020 election. I do believe that if you guys would have been a little less insane on crime in the summer of 20, you would have completely clobbered us in November of 20. It was like it was the riots that even made 2020 close.
Right.
But then it was the extension of all of the what we would call woke stuff.
Right. Defund police.
Yeah, I mean, Minneapolis literally had to hold a special vote saying, like, should we still have a police department?
Yeah, that was lunacy.
I mean, but I don't want to.
By the way, you're talking to someone who's never supported the defund
No, I'm not
police.
saying, I know, but
I was explicit. But
I love how he threw in the and Asian, but Ash, do you want to talk on that since it's California schools?
Yeah, I have kids in California schools, and that is 100% not happening at all. These schools are absolutely still teaching very like whitewashed, incorrect history. If anything, what I have noticed in public schools since the pandemic is they have gotten more conservative. So my children have had multiple write-ups for saying things like, "Oh my God," in a public school. Like I have had to go to like the school district and fight with them about this. So like overall, what I personally am seeing is that these schools are getting more conservative. They are not teaching to hate white kids. I'm not understanding where that's coming from. And, you know, Charlie Kirk's 8-year-old son probably is racist. Like, let's be real.
I mean,
For real.
for sure. So, you got anything?
I think all of us can recognize that, you know, we don't go around and be like every little white kid is racist in the sense that they are internalizing it and being that way. But we grow up in a system of white supremacy.
Yeah.
And I think even young children need to learn about that stuff because I'm sure, and I'm not trying to put you on any kind of, you know, on the point crazy. You had to realize that was your reality when you were a young child, you know, versus, you know, white people don't have to do that. So yeah, let's make white children a little uncomfortable. We got to assume that they're compassionate and knowledgeable enough to change the way they view things.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah, just kind of hop on what Nico said. Like, I was actually going to say, like, we can't teach white kids that, you know, their great grandparents were probably racist and, you know, protested against civil rights and fought in the Civil War. But then black kids can be shot in the street and have guns pointed at them by police. Like, you know, when you're black, you don't get any protection from racism. If you're Asian, you don't get any protection from racism. If you're Hispanic, you don't get any protection from this. The only people we're concerned about protecting are white kids. And literally, we're doing it in like the softest way possible of, hey, let's like actually teach real history for once. And I think part of it is because they don't want people to realize just how whitewashed history is. It's whitewashed from Native American history. It's whitewashed from the civil rights. It's whitewashed because we don't even learn about Asian or Hispanic history like at all in school. If it is, it's passing at best. You know, and then we learn about America's history worldwide. We don't know about the full history of World War II. We don't know about the full history of the Korean War, Vietnam War. Like literally recently, on my own research, just researching history for fun, I finally realized what the context of the Korean War was. It happened during the Chinese Civil War. That's why that even started, because they wanted to invade mainland China, because that's when, you know, the communists were fighting the, you know, old Chinese empire and stuff like that. Well, I'm not empire, but like Taiwan and everything, you know.
Yeah.
Like that's the context of all of that, and that's kind of like what I want to get into when he was talking about race-based teaching against white people. Oh, so like CRT, critical race theory, that's taught in first of all like actual what was it like law school? Like it wasn't even anything that was in public schools. Yeah. It was in a specific school of higher education. Like, and it's like the reason why that scares them so much is because CRT at its base is kind of dialectical. It's literally all about studying how race relations in racial history in the United States still leads to discrimination, in this case via the law, today in the United States. Like, where do you think loitering came from? Where do you think what do you think all the gyms, you know, went? It didn't just disappear out of thin air. It just changed form into things today. We went from the juror segregation to de facto. We just went from throwing Black people, we're still throwing them in jail, but we're throwing them in jail in different ways and getting caught up in all these different ways and different economic struggles and things like that. Yeah. And so, and it's just, I don't even know. It's just one of those things where, like, yeah, your 8-year-old probably is racist, Charlie. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. And like, I have to like correct things like pretty constantly that my kids like learn at school in, quote unquote, California. Like I have a son in 4th grade, and in 4th grade, the kids learn about the Spanish missions, and the way that they teach about them is totally incorrect. So I am constantly having to like correct the things that they are learning. And like, so a big topic in our house over the last couple of weeks has been about the genocide of the indigenous people of Turtle Island. Yeah. I wish that the California public schools were teaching about racism, but they aren't. It's quite the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I was gonna say to what Crazy was bringing up brought up some anti-communism. This whole is two bourgeois people talking, and they are totally being anti-communist because they're totally dismissing the left in their conversation. So, all right, let's go to the next clip.
I have a 8-year-old white son. Are you trying to say he's a racist?
Yeah. No.
And it creates a backlash that then bubbles up, right?
I appreciate the perspective.
And
I appreciate not just the perspective. I totally appreciate what you just said. As an explicit statement of fact, to make an 8-year-old feel like they're racist is absurd.
But Governor, with all due respect, that's happening right now in California public schools. And I'm not trying to drill you on it. I'm just being honest. Like, you could say that, but like, maybe you should like convene a special session and say like, no more, race-based teaching against white people in the schools of California or Asians. I'm just saying though that like, this is not a conjecture. It's not a hypothetical. Right. It is embedded into the DNA of the Democrat Party.
Yeah, okay.
Democrats cannot survive in long-form podcasting environments.
Why?
It's too unscripted. It's too masculine, honestly. And the Democrat Party's become too
What is
feminine.
masculine about a podcast? Honestly, because I get the whole manosphere, this
to go into the wilderness with no rules and duel it out and see who's better or who's stronger. No, seriously. I mean, like, what? No, I mean, like,
we don't do it.
But
you're right. We, for whatever reason, don't do it.
You can laugh, but like, who in the Democrat Party?
We're not. You're right.
Will go. I mean, maybe Bernie Sanders, but he only
RFK when he was a Democrat.
Well, Bobby, who's now HHS. But like, there's something to be said that if you want to earn the respect of forgotten America, you have to show them that you can intellectually joust with no script.
All right. Yeah. You got to go into the wilderness and duel it out. That's what
Is that what we're doing right now?
We're dueling it out. Come on.
Yeah, I wanted to say when they were like, "Oh, podcasts are masculine." Hello, we have girls' club. No, they're not.
It's so foolish. It's so like there. It's just like Charlie's just bullying Newsom. Like Newsom can't even say that, oh, you guys are weaponizing the trans issue, and Charlie like gets all mad, but then here he's like, he walks all over like the Democrats aren't masculine. And he's not going to have any pushback. He's just going to go, how is a podcast masculine? Like, I don't even get why he has these people on the show. And that was the other thing. Like I just want to mention, like, other people that he has had on the show since is he's had the guy from the Savage Report, and he's had Bannon, and so he finally had Tim Walz on this week. So he's actually talking to a Democrat now, I guess. I don't know. But okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like, I had to, that's why I made a mark for this clip, just because of how ridiculous it was. I was like, what do you mean a podcast is masculine and it's like going out into the wilderness? I'm like, have you not heard the joke of like, oh, you're a white guy with a microphone? Where's your podcast at, bro?
Yeah.
Like, we know you're going to be sitting there in front of your computer in your nice little like room in your desk being ready to go. But I'm just going to say, actually, I think podcasts are better when they're girly pop.
Yes,
so.
I believe that.
The best podcasts are girl podcasts.
So true. I feel so in the wilderness right now.
Yeah.
We're in the wilderness.
Come on, lady, where are your spears? We're hunting all the debate bros.
I wish.
All right, let's next clip.
Number one, your upbringing in college campuses does not foster debate like it used to. It just doesn't. It's that it's about silencing the critic and the elevation of the victim. So you do not have the practice of robust having to defend your position. It's very monolithic. It's very centralized. It's very top down. It's quasi-authoritarian. And then secondly, I would just say that the philosophy on the worldview, as I mentioned earlier, that you guys have adopted is that thou which is oppressed will get the most points. You guys don't have thou that has the best idea wins. And because of that, you guys have an elevation of like, hey, we're just going to have a small subset of a minoritarian hectoring hall monitor assistant principal vibe of people telling you that you're not allowed to say these words and you can't say that. And we call that political correctness, which in and of itself is hyper-authoritarian.
Minoritarian.
Like, you're just making up some words.
We have the billionaires. The billionaires are running the country right now. We do have a minoritarian.
Minoritarian is actually extremely crazy of a word. Minority and authority. Like, okay, yeah, sure. Okay, Shakespeare. Okay.
When I first heard about that, I was like, why is he talking about minotaurs? But then I realized.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
You want to say so much nonsense, I have to create new words to explain my nonsense.
Right.
Because of what? I'm gonna put that in my bio, minoritarian from now on.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
So I was gonna say, like, I like how they Charlie Kirk says it's a top-down hyper-authoritarian system. And I'm like, isn't that what you want?
Exactly.
Like, that's literally what Trump offers for a lot of people. Like, he's your number one guy. You're mythologizing him. Like, that's what you want.
It's so ridiculous because he's still, and he tries to make Trump like the regular guy, like he's the regular guy, and everyone should, be like Trump and be the regular guy. Because even in like a past clip, he was like something like, "Oh, Trump gave the white boys something to look up to." You know what I mean? Like, no, he didn't. No, he came from money. Like, he is not like everyone else. You know what I mean? So.
What do you call it? The muscle class? Is Trump part of the muscle class?
Yeah, he must be. He must be part of it.
Trump have a degree?
You gotta realize Trump is part of the muscle class because he came from the proletariat.
Wow. Oh man. All right.
You have to go to war with your own party on three major things. You got to say, we are not going to do this illegal immigration thing anymore, which includes, like, are you going to work with ICE?
We do work with ICE.
Okay, great. So
by the way,
I want to make
so
sure
people know this. We have been. I, in fact, directly, we actually put out the data. I actually reached out to the administration saying, are you not aware that California coordinates and cooperates with all CDCR releases over 10,000?
Explain the sanctuary state thing then. What is the difference?
You got the statewide sanctuary state, and you got
Governor
local
Brown
sanctuary
signed in,
cities.
not you.
Yeah, which in the statewide framework allows us to work as it relates to issues of criminals and coordinating the release of criminals from our from our state prison system. We coordinate with ICE on the deportation. We've done that over 10,000 times since I've been governor. We're not denying access. We're not denying coordination.
I'm glad to hear that. That's why I asked.
For criminals. Sanctuary policy was never...
I would say if you break into the country illegally, 8 U.S.C. 1325 is a breaking of federal law,
it's
right?
Civil, not criminal.
But it is a federal law.
I get it.
But I'm saying, so by the way, if you're serious about moderating the party, 8 U.S.C. 1325, vast majority of Americans...
Okay, so
let me just go through. Vast majority of Americans want mass deportations. It's just a thing.
Until they don't.
Well, okay.
That's my humble opinion.
Fine.
Until they don't.
Okay.
Someone who's been here 10 years,
you might be right.
Paying taxes, I don't buy it.
You might, well,
but at the moment, you're right.
You might be right.
Okay, so Ash, did you want to talk on that one?
Yeah. So people sort of have this idea that when California became like a sanctuary state, I think in 17, that means like people literally have sanctuary here, and that like law enforcement will like protect you. And that's absolutely not true at all whatsoever. It's just, the only thing that it is that like ICE can't use like state or local resources to investigate, detain, or arrest immigrants solely for the purposes of deportation. And they're very tricky about this language, like using the word like solely, right? And you'll see that come up a lot in the California Values Act. So they will, and they absolutely do work with ICE to deport people if they can give a reason that is not considered primary. As long as the deportation is not considered like the primary reason. So like one of the ways that we see them get around this, like in California, is they will do like excessive traffic stops and sobriety checks.
Yep.
So like sobriety checks here are really, really known for like getting people like deported. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it does limit like ICE being able to go to like schools, hospitals, or churches. But there are actually a couple of cities in California that are suing to be non-sanctuary states, like Huntington Beach recently announced that they will not be a sanctuary city. But yeah, so it's pretty much.
Yeah, Boston's a sanctuary too, and it's basically the same thing. And you know, you had the human guy saying, "Hey, we're gonna go into Boston," you know, like prepare yourselves, Boston, and you know that was a few weeks ago when they were saying that. But no, it doesn't protect the people.
No. It definitely doesn't. And then like right before like Biden left office, we saw the largest sweep of undocumented peoples in 40 years, 4 decades, happen in California just a couple of weeks before Trump took office. Like this is obviously something that was already planned out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, and that like, for my own experiences, just as having someone, my first point is when I bring this up, like it's very obvious, especially with conservatives and even with the Democrats, that it's racist at its core, this idea of like illegal immigrants and stuff like that. But it's still like you mentioned, like traffic stops. Growing up, having an undocumented immigrant as a father, one of the things I was taught first is if the car breaks down, my dad has to leave. He has to walk away. And we need to stay there so we can just be like, someone's coming with a tow truck. Don't worry, cop, you can leave. My dad couldn't visit me a lot because of the fact that he, didn't have a license. If he got pulled over at a random traffic check, it was over. Yeah. So it's California knows that that's the easiest way to find undocumented immigrants. And it's so insidious because we live in a capitalist society where even immigrants have to rely on cars to get anywhere, to be able to work just like everybody else does.
Yep. All right. Last clip, guys.
We'll see. Number 2, we mentioned the trans stuff. It's an affront to all of our senses. It's out of control.
Yeah. You don't believe in it fundamentally. It's not just sports. It's not style. You just don't. I mean, get back to living
Kirk's views are separate than the political advice I'm giving. But if you'd like me to, we should do a whole.
No, I get it.
Charlie Kirk asked me anything, and you could show up to Cal State Northridge
on
Thursday.
I've got 25 TikToks of what your feelings are. So actually, that was a question I didn't even ask.
If you want it, it's fine. I just don't think that's the best use of our time. But on the political advice is that Americans increasingly believe that their good-heartedness and charitable nature towards the LGBT issue has gone overblown, especially with youth sports, youth curriculum, and the chemical castration of our kids when it comes to this medical therapy. And you seem that you want to really, I encourage you, Governor, to learn about some of the butchery under the guise of healthcare that is happening under chemical castration in this state and in other states. We don't spend a lot of time on that, but the American people are overwhelmingly against it. Yeah. They're overwhelmingly against it.
No, I think we have to be more sensitized to that.
Youth should be off limits. I think that's the political direction things are going. Yeah. You might be right on deportations. I know I'm right on this. I know that this issue is picking up steam. There is no good counter to it. The CAST report, the United Kingdom CAST report, the NHS came out and said there's no good reason to ever operate surgically on a young person. Puberty's not the problem. Puberty's the solution. I mean, I encourage
I'm not an expert in this, but I appreciate your
nor am I,
broader.
but I'm saying politically, it's a super turbocharged issue that is kicking the tail.
Aren't there medical reasons that have nothing to do with trans that the kids would have to go through procedures, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was one of those kids. I had to go through a medical procedure when I was 9 days old. Like, it's ridiculous. And, you know, I want to note that chemical castration is not happening. If it does happen, it's most likely to happen to something like a child who is intersex, and parents decide what gender and sex that child is going to be instead of allowing them to do so. It's a traumatic experience, but of course, Charlie Kirk doesn't care about that. Charlie Kirk thinks that, you know, say like, you know, me when I was younger being like, maybe I'm not a girl or a boy meant that I got to go and get all of my stuff removed. That's not what's happening. That's never what's happened. It takes a lot just to even get on gender affirming care when it comes to like, you know, hormones and puberty blockers. So the idea that we're doing this is just completely ridiculous, and it's harmful to children.
Yeah. Yeah, he says like, oh, because it's all going towards like not harming children. You all are harming children. Like they're the ones harming the children. It's not, you know, it's they got their points that they could get people to believe. And so now they know like the trans issues, like more, you know, you have like 70% of people are cool with trans people, you know what I mean? But then when you get down to these nitty gritty things and you've convinced them of this stuff, it becomes an 80-20 then. It becomes an 80-20 issue because you're lying to the freaking public.
And also, not to mention, on like the whole chemical castration thing, chemical castration was something that was used, ironically enough, against gay people already. I believe
Exactly.
Alan Turing, you know, who's famous for like the Turing test and the father of, computers and things like that. Like he was chemically castrated. And a lot of men, gay men in Britain at that time were being chemically castrated as a punishment for their homosexuality and things like that. And then when you get into this whole chemical castrating, you have to bring up stuff like forced sterilization, which happens to, guess what? Women and POC women mostly. So, and also, one thing I noted was that he started doing it. Like, there's this new trend happening now amongst the conservatives where they're saying that empathy is now a bad thing, or like the sin of empathy, as they're calling it, and how he kind of glossed through that when he was talking about, oh, the good-heartedness of Americans or the LGBTQ community is overblown. Like, he's starting to get to that whole, like when Elon Musk was like, oh yeah, empathy is a weakness in the fall of Western civilization. And it's like, no, it's not. That's the only thing keeping us together at this point. And they're already trying to get with the whole, like, don't be nice to these people in there. Don't be nice at all anymore. Don't have any more empathy at all anymore. Yeah. And it's, and it's just pretty scary, frankly, because now they're just trying to justify the psychopathy that they all have. And it's just like not, it's just not going to work out, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do just want to bring up a little quick note. Of course, Charlie Kirk's talking about this, like we have to be concerned it's happening. I can tell you for a fact that right now, currently 31 states in the United States still allow forced sterilization on disabled people. Like that's still a real thing that affects everyone across the board, because sooner or later you're going to become disabled, whether it's just you getting older or you being forced to work in these jobs that are telling you to pull your bootstraps up for. But yeah, no, there's things like this happening, but the problem is they're turning it and making it a cisgender white person issue instead of focusing on the actual oppression, because I guess that's too hyper authoritarian for them.
Yeah, and the whole thing with the oppressed versus the oppressor and that the GOP is about right versus wrong. And what is the right versus wrong?
The GOP are the most wrong people on the face of the planet. What are they talking about?
Right.
The last when I saw that, I was like, and also the whole like, oh, and the oppressors were run out. That's why they do. It's like, no, they didn't. The oppressors never ran out.
They never do.
Because he's talking about systems. Like, white people were oppressors back in the 1960s. White people were oppressors back when we were still slaves. White people were oppressors back when they were still colonizing and discovering parts of the world. Like they never ran out because there are systems and they still pass down these systems to generation after generation after generation.
Yeah.
And like no, the oppressors have never run out because the system is still oppressive.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that system will adjust. It's one of my favorite books that I encourage all Irish Americans to read is How the Irish Became White. Like, white supremacy needed more people under it to help enforce it. So they were like, all right, Irish people, you can be white now.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll give you the jobs of, being the slave catchers and then the policemen. Yeah. That's what we'll give you. Yeah. So yeah. Anything else? Ash, you want to add anything on that or anything to add overall on the entire horrible experience? I do want to say I get more kudos than everyone else because I listened to that damn thing like 5 times now.
I only listened to it once and I couldn't do it anymore.
You're entitled
you
to financial
definitely do.
compensation from Collective now.
Literally, I can't. They sound like it's like watching Beavis and Butthead. I swear, it was such a painful watch.
Yeah. No, it's like there's so much smugness. There's just so much like not understanding anything of anybody's issue, like doing the whole like not being able to talk about working class people and like all he's doing in the colleges is basically the way he explains it. He just goes there to be a troll. He doesn't really care. He just wants to go there and troll people on the colleges. He doesn't care about the working class. That's not what they care about.
He doesn't care about the working class. He cares about the muscular class.
The muscular.
Get it right, Lumpy.
Charlie Kirk really likes those muscular men, I must say.
That's what I mean. That's the overall. I mean, that is the overall theme: is the muscular men.
Absolutely,
he likes the strong, muscular men from the proletariat. With a strong, that's what fascism is. Fascism is just like insecurity. Like they like strong men to lead all the other men. I can't keep going.
There was one thing on the first clip that I didn't bring up, and when he was saying like we came up with a unique, creative way to get people, and it's like, no, I think there was a man named Hitler that kind of used some of the same tactics. Like these are it's the tactics the army uses in high schools. It's
right.
It's the same freaking tactics that all the oppressing bullies use, and it's not unique nor creative. And there's nothing unique nor creative about Charlie Kirk, except for his little tiny face.
True.
Absolutely.
All right. On that note, I brought up Collective Live before. You can go follow that on YouTube. Ash does her lives. You can check those out on TikTok. What else do we got going? We got anything else going besides
check out the Collective Discord, and we also have a Patreon now as well. So if you all can go check that out, that'll be cool.
Ivan, don't hurt me for not bringing up the Patreon. Go join the Patreon. It's for like $1.
It's $2.
It's $3?
Sorry, $2.
Oh, $2. It's $2.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
So there is actually an episode there that we cannot have up on YouTube. So there is an episode there you can watch there with Comrade Workwear. So. All right, everyone. Anything else to say?
I'm going to finish off with saying no one is illegal on stolen land, and there is a trans genocide going on. So support your trans community as much as possible.
Yes. Ditto. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Расцветали яблони и груши, поплыли туманы над рекой. Выходила на берег Катюша, на высокий берег, на крутой. Выходила на берег Катюша, на высокий